Thank you for staying with us. In case you are just joining us, karibu tena sana. This is Good Morning Kenya. My name is Jane Wamboy. You can always let us know where you're watching us from this morning. We are using the hashtag Good Morning Kenya on Twitter. Our official station handle ever remains to be at KBC Channel 1 across all the social media platforms. My handle is at Jane Wamboy. And should you be moving from the comfort of your home, you can always stream us live via any portable device that you could be having. Our website is at www.kbc.co.ke, and you'll be able to keep up with all that is happening right here on Good Morning Kenya. Now, from that fantastic discussion that we just had there before the break, the joint production between Good Morning Kenya, Radio Taifa, as well as English Service, we now bring you to our next segment, and this is all about women in leadership. And today we have a presidential aspirant. This is Wairimu Faith. Good morning.
Good morning, my boy.
Welcome to the program. Thank you for making time to be with us today.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
Are you available on the social platforms?
Yes, I am.
How can our viewers interact with you?
Look for me on Facebook, YouTube, LinkedIn, TikTok, Twitter as Wairimu Faith.
Wairimu Faith.
Yes.
So should you have any questions for her, or you're just seeking clarification, or you have comments to share in regards to this discussion, we welcome you to do so. We will be getting to them as and when we get to interact with you. Use those social platforms that I issued earlier on. So, Wairimu Faith.
Yes.
Presidential aspirant 2022.
That's right.
One would say this is such a grand ambition.
That's right.
Is it?
It is in all aspects and in every intent, because we are talking about being responsible for over 50 million Kenyans.
Yes.
And at a time when we've just come from a pandemic and people have lost their jobs, there's a lot of hopelessness, desperation. We are also coming to an election that the youth are not engaged in, are not interested in, are apathetic to. And we are trying to figure out a whole election with a majority of the people who should be voting not interested in the process. So is it a grand ambition? Yes, it is.
And it is one that you have chosen to go in as an independent candidate.
That's right.
Why so, as opposed to being part of a coalition or party?
I believe that when you want to bring change, you've got to be out of the system. The good book tells us that you cannot put new wine in old wineskins. And so we are at a place where we are thinking about rebirthing a nation and bringing forth a new nation, because we cannot continue with the status quo. My son asked me, what does it mean to be a Kenyan? And I looked at him and I said, very good question. What defines us as a people? What is it that we are proud of? What are our values? And for me to come in and to begin to help Kenyans to have a national conversation of who we are as a people, what do we believe in, what are our ethics, what are our morals. I cannot be part of an old system and try to bring in change. I have to be an individual who believes in change and who also brings in this national conversation for us to have. And so that's where I'm vying as an independent candidate.
Now, you are a woman of faith,
yes,
and you also have a background in the education sector.
That's right.
Where do your interest in politics stem from?
Very good question. So I can look at it two ways.
Yeah.
So I'm going to give you a bit of my history. So I come from the beautiful county of Nakuru. I'm a Nakuru, we call it Nux Vegas. And when I was growing up, I remember in 1988, my school being disrupted because apparently it was time for election and we were having something called Mlolongo during the former President Moi's time. And because of the commotion around Mlolongo, which didn't seem to be very popular with the people, we were disrupted and we went home. And I asked my parents what's going on. They said also there is election and it has disrupted the normal running of your day.
Yes.
Then after 1988, it will be 1992. Again, we are in school, and guess what? The ethnic tension in Nakuru, violence, is the first time I see human beings carrying arrows in their body, and I see so much blood. I had never seen so much blood. 1997 is another bloody election. By this time, I began to understand, as a very young child, that Kenyan politics is equal to violence. Kenyan politics means that it's time for innocent people to die. And I began to ask myself as a child, why do we need to have elections if people are going to die? Or is it that elections are more important than people? I began to have these questions in my mind. Unfortunately, no one has the answers. The only time in my life that I didn't see violence is the 2002 election. Then after that, we will now have a very bloody election. In 2007, 2008, it happened at my doorstep. And people that I knew died. And by the time it's 2008, I began to write articles about the state of the nation. Where are we? Who are Kenyans? And why do we have to kill during elections? Because I live in Nakuru. Nakuru is a beautiful town, cosmopolitan. My friends are from all ethnic communities, and we never have issues until the election time. And so after that, then I will deviate, get into education. My first degree is in education. That's why I'm an educator. And I will follow that route of being in education. I will deviate again, work for Safaricom, work for NIC Bank, now NCBA, and then go to the US, teach, and then come back, work for the US Embassy, and oversee education for the US Embassy from 2012 to 2020. After that, then I will leave the US Embassy to take up a higher position with the US government under Education USA to oversee 19 African countries in the region of East and Central Africa. I was in charge of 19 embassies and consulates, and again, I'm overseeing education. And so this is where these two tie in, that where I am coming from, I have seen a rotten system of politics. I have seen where people died and no one ever stopped to say so-and-so died because of elections. A system that doesn't have consequences when we lose people. And going into the other part of education, I begin to see that education can change people's lives.
Yeah.
There are kids whose families suffered the post-election violence. They lost everything. But one of them is now living in the United States, very successful young man. And then I begin to ask myself a question. Why is it that when we keep our graduates in Kenya, they become unemployed? And even if they get a salary, it's not really meaningful. So they cannot do anything meaningful with the salaries that they are having. What is it about our businesses that they're not able to pay people meaningful salaries? When we take these kids out of Kenya, we take them to the US, you find somebody earning close to 1 million shillings at 22. That should tell us something. That means that our education system is definitely not relevant.
Okay.
It is not relevant to addressing the needs of the market.
Now, looking at our political setup, we have 6 elective posts.
Yes.
But you chose to go for the presidency.
Exactly.
As opposed to any other of the 6 that are there.
That's right.
Why?
Because you can never change anything from down.
But they say the leadership that is most in touch with the people is those that are on the ground.
Absolutely. And I love that because, again, it is the people who are closest to the people that bring the services to them. But it is the president who determines the route the country is going to be on. It is the presidency that determines whether the person on the ground has the resources to serve their people. It is the office, it is the executive that determines whether we observe the rule of law. It is the presidency that determines whether we are going to allocate resources in education, change the education system, give money to agriculture, give money to our hospitals. It is the presidency that sets policies. Once we begin to change things from down, I'm going to tell you this, and I'm an apostle. I'm a woman of God. What we end up doing is that the church has been relegated to pray for policy issues. So we are praying for things that government, the executive, is responsible for. The legislative arm of government is responsible for. And so what happens, so we are looking at leadership, not just a governmental leadership, but we are looking even at the church being in leadership, and for us being responsible for the Kenyans that are under our umbrella. We do not have the resources to take care of the people. For instance, COVID. I have never bought so much food for people like I did during COVID time. But you're not going to tell somebody, God bless you, God will provide. That person is going to die of hunger. You have to take care of them. Now, 740,000 Kenyans lost their jobs during COVID. What has happened is that we have more people that cannot take care of themselves. And again, they're coming down to the people that they're closest to. They're coming to the church and they're saying, hey, woman of God, pray for me because I need a job. It's not God's work to give people jobs. That's not God's responsibility. The responsibility of God is to give us his mind for us to think for ourselves and ask ourselves what kind of leadership is going to give us what we need. You cannot pray for a job. That is being out of character with why the church exists. So we need to change it from the top. Make sure that we have policies that cushion people, because we have seen a pandemic coming. Pandemics can come or things can happen. How do you take care of your people and empower the people who are in touch with the people on the ground to take care of your people?
Now, this brings me to your leadership.
Yes.
What is your understanding of the role of women when it comes to politics and leadership in the Kenyan space?
Thank you very much. And I think this is a conversation that we must have. that a majority of women would rather sit in a place where they can deal with policy issues and not issues that are being manipulated by people who have no interest in creating a better society for Kenyans. Now, think about it. As a woman, you're responsible for your family, and you're always thinking about the best for your children. And you're always looking out for how can I make sure that my children have a better life tomorrow than they have today. And then you come into a place that is full of mischief, that is looking at how we're going to eat public funds. And you're thinking, if I was running my house, I wouldn't run it this way. Why should I miss out an opportunity where I can make impact and not be dragged in things that I don't believe in,
yes,
as opposed to taking my time to fight with things? So many women, again, stay from that and say, you know what, let me stay in my Fortune 500 company. I'll still make an impact. I'll still serve people. I'll create a foundation and help people.
So what is it about Kenyan politics that doesn't sit right with you as a woman who wants to get into this political space, and especially looking at the presidency?
I think one of the things that is very obvious to me is that we do not have ethics. It is not a platform that embraces ethics. When we look at how we run our politics, and I'm sorry to say this, but sometimes you have to put things in the sun to sanitize them, is that you want to give people money to vote for you. As opposed to telling people, these are my policies, this is what I want to bring to you. You want the easier way out. I'm going to give you money. After I give you money, vote for me. What does that do? It short circuits our thinking. And you end up voting for somebody who immediately they get into that leadership position, they have to take back the money that they give you. Remember that they're not free lunches. So once they get into politics, they're not going to think, oh, you need better roads, you need a better education system, the teachers are not being paid. What they're thinking about is, how much did I spend for this election? I need to get my money back. Number two, I think there's a serious indictment on our elective process when the youth of this country refuse to be a part of the political process, and it is on record that the youth refused to register as voters. Why won't they register as voters? Because the youth who are younger than us are asking us, you presenters with an election with two options, as it were, it's no longer a two-horse race right now. You present us with two people that we do not believe in, and do you say we're still going to go on with an election having given us choices that we don't believe in, and they pull back? And this is a conversation that we must have as a country. A country without ethics, a country without morals, a country with no consequence, that you can go and loot public funds and there is no consequence. And today when we see our children burning schools, we want to say we need to cane them. Why do you cane them when there is no consequence to our public officials that loot the system dry? Number two, when we look at it, it is very clear, again, it's on record. The IEBC dates for us to begin campaigning is May 29. We've been campaigning for the last 5 years. Again, it's a very serious indictment on Chebukati. Where is he when the laws of the IEBC are being breached about when we're supposed to start the official campaign season? That means that we are a nation that has nothing. We have no moral fabric that holds us together.
This is still Good Morning Kenya, and remember, this is a conversation about women in politics, women in leadership, understanding what role women have to play, and the whole question of gender is right at the center of this discussion. And we welcome you to share with us your thoughts, questions, comments. Use the hashtag Good Morning Kenya. We'll be getting to them in just a bit. My handle is at Jane Wamboy. Official station handle is at KBC Channel 1. Now, gender has always been an emotive issue in the political space, and you know, the 2/3 gender principle has always been at the center of this whenever we talk about gender and politics and representation in the Kenyan space. What are your thoughts on the gender roles that have been assigned to ladies and gentlemen in the Kenyan space, in the Kenyan political space, to be specific?
We need to increase the numbers for us to be able to achieve it. The outgoing National Assembly did not observe it. We need to open up a space and encourage women to take up more roles in governance, to take up more roles in elective positions. We still are lagging behind, but I think that we are we are moving in the right direction, but a lot more needs to be done to encourage women to vie for elective positions. Now, having said that, we also...
What do you think discourages women from, vying for these elective positions? Is it a question of there not being the opportunity, or women not presenting themselves for the available opportunities?
Thank you. So having said that, then we need to look at the reasons why women are not engaging. Number one, as I have just said, it's a political process that most women would rather shy away from and stay away from. Number two, then we need to think about bringing women to an elective process that is very expensive, because campaigns are expensive. Then we talk about the issue of funding. Most of the women do not have the funds to run any political campaigns. Number three, it is also the thought that if you are not in a position to get into a party, then you have to vie as an independent candidate. You have to do your own branding, your own marketing by yourself. Now, when this woman thinks about what they have to do and the amount of work that they have to do to represent people, then they don't come in. So we are talking about encouraging the women, but also creating a process and a system that supports these women to run.
All right. Now, you are a woman, but you're also a young person at that.
That's right.
And, looking at the most recent voter registration processes, the youth constitute the biggest chunk that were being targeted by the IEBC. And yet, they are the biggest part that did not show up to register to vote. What is the driving force behind this? Youth not showing up to claim their right, the democratic right to vote, while still complaining that, this government doesn't cater for us as the youth?
They say that when you look at silence, it is not what you see, it is what is not being spoken. The youth are rebelling against a system that they do not consider democratic. Before I started, putting everything together and say that, and come out publicly on Good Friday to say that I'm going to vie for the presidency, the first thing that I did is engage with a lot of youth, because I'm a youth, so it's within my circles. And I asked them, why are you apathetic to the process? Why do you want to be away from the process? And one thing that they told me that I think that we need to stop and think about, they said it is not about the person that casts the vote. But the election, the Kenyan election, is about the person who counts the vote that has been cast. And they don't believe there is any credibility. And so, it is not that they are quiet, it's not that they are not interested, but it's a rebellion for a system they do not see credibility in. And so they stay away from it. And the question then is, and this is where we should have a concern as a nation, and as we talk about the forthcoming general election, are we genuinely interested in having an election that gives every citizen their democratic right to vote? Have we considered all factors to make sure that we are creating a field where everybody can say it is level and I am interested in participating in it? And my question is, who is a leader if I told the people that you alleged to be leading are not following? These are questions that we must stop and think.
All right.
And begin to ask ourselves, if more than 50% of the people that we want to lead in this country are not going to vote for us, then who are we going to be leading?
Who are we going to be leading? Remember, we are still having this conversation all about women in politics, in leadership, understanding the role that as women, what role do we have to play in the political space? Again, they always say women constitute the largest part of the population, not just in Kenya, but globally. But, experts have come out to counter that narrative. They say it's a 50-50 kind of situation here. But then again, the question of representation where women are involved in political spaces, in spaces that, make the decisions, not just for the people, but for the country and all the entities that come into play when it comes to the value chain here in our country. Women have a say, and for the longest time we haven't seen them showing up. So why is this so? We have with us Wairimu Faith in studio. She is a presidential aspirant for the 2022 general elections. Now, you recently announced your presidential bid. What was the reception?
It was brilliant, and it continues to be brilliant from the messages that I receive on social media and the people that I meet. And interesting, everybody tells me I was not going to meet, especially the youth. Now, when we interact in our circles, the first thing they tell me is that I was not intending to vote. But you stay the course, I'm going to vote for you. Number two, Kenyans don't believe their voices matter anymore. They believe that this is a rigged system, it's a rigged election, that at the end of the day, there are people who have decided who is going to be president. And I am concerned by that, because that makes people feel hopeless. And I want to talk to the youth and tell them that their voice matters. And it is important that we begin to make our voice heard, and we can make it heard through the election process. And I also believe that the IEBC has a very huge task of rebranding itself as a credible electoral body. And they have a lot of work to do, and through civic education especially, to reach out to the youth and tell them this is our responsibility. And our responsibility is to make sure that we have a successful election. And this is what success means to us. It's a free election, it's a fair election, peaceful election, safe election, whatever it is that IEBC wants to tell the youth. But most importantly, to engage the youth. Just because they did not register doesn't mean that you say, you know what, they're not interested, let's forget them. It means that IEBC, you have work to reach out to these people and convince them that you have their best interests at heart.
And remember, you can still register as a voter. Just because the mass registration process was over doesn't mean that you have been denied that right to register as a voter. So look around within your area and see where you can be able to register when it comes to the voting process. Now, as a presidential candidate, what is your campaign manifesto centered on?
Thank you very much. So the reason why I'm vying is because I've looked at the problems of this nation. For me, they are very simple things to sort out. I have solutions for them. And having said that, basically, again, we go back to we must have a conversation of who we are as a people. We must address the ethos. Once we address the ethos, then we have other things to think about. But I've talked about our education system. Is it possible that we have an education system that is relevant to us? Think about it. We have just gone through a pandemic, and the pandemic has shifted how we even do trade and commerce. But our education system hasn't changed. It is time for us to ask ourselves, are we just interested in taking kids through school and say, hey, government has done its work, everybody is educated? Or are we interested in taking our children through a relevant education that makes them not just globally competitive, but that makes our country globally competitive? Because there are two things. You can make people globally competitive. That's what's happening. Our youth are working for Fortune 500 companies in Europe and in North America, or we can make our country globally competitive. So we must address our education system. What are we teaching our kids? Are we teaching them ethics in school? What is the content? Are we taking care of the teachers? At the end of the day, do you know that a teacher is the only person who is employed to work 24 hours a day? How do we remunerate them? How do we put money in the education system? Do we give the teacher the resources that they require to teach a child in a post-pandemic world? Are we remunerating them well? Are our teachers motivated to stay in that classroom and teach? What about our class sizes? Think about it. We have students, in some classes, we have 100 students in one class. Now, I've been a teacher. I have had a classroom of 9 people that I was teaching at any particular time. What does that mean? It means that I have time to interact with these students and be able to tell who understood what I taught and who didn't. When you have 100 students, you're trying to cover the syllabus, make sure you're not in trouble with the Ministry of Education, and make sure that the students understand what they need. So we need to have that conversation. But by and large, we must talk about our economy. How do we motivate our people? How do we motivate the business owners? How do we motivate the SME? Number one, we need to make sure that we think about even our taxation. Our corporate taxes are too high, 30%. Is it possible that we can lower that and make sure that Kenya becomes a place that is attractive to investors? Are we allowing the investors to plow back money into their companies? Number two, are we thinking about the cost of energy? Because if we are saying that we are going to create jobs, and jobs are going to be in the manufacturing space, the cost of our energy is exorbitant. Can we just cut out the fuel levy taxes? Can we cut out the VAT on fuel? Can we lower that cost of energy to make sure that the manufacturing companies are viable? Are we also going to think about the SMEs? Because the SMEs are the biggest employer of people in this country. How are we going to buffer the SMEs? How are we going to make it easier for them to run? their businesses? How are we going to make sure that they can employ people? How are we going to make sure that the person who is selling at a shop somewhere in River Road, that they have a conducive environment to run their businesses? How are we going to make imports easier? How are we going to make exports easier? Just make sure that we rethink about our economic model, about our monetary policy, our taxation policy, and make sure that it favors Kenyans. It favors our local industries. It favors our business people for us to grow. Now, having said that, let's even just think about agriculture. There are many other things in my manifesto that I haven't talked about, but I'll talk about. But I just want to put things that should be common sense to us by now, but they're not common sense. Think about agriculture. It is the biggest contributor to our economy.
It's one of the principal sectors, yeah.
But think about it. Our farmers every year are crying about fertilizer. I mean, I come from Nakuru County. We are farmers. But it's been the same story. I've grown up with that fertilizer story. I'm growing up and it's the same story that we're going through. Is it possible that we think about the agricultural extension officers, bring them back into the system, let them support the farmers? Let the agricultural extension officers tell my administration this is what we foresee as the needs in terms of fertilizer in the next 5 years. Make sure that we have all those things in the silos, provide for the farmers. The people who were lucky to get fertilizer this year, the armyworm just came and ate up all the crops, so they will not be harvesting anything. But if we had a technical capacity for them, they would come and make sure that these people, the farmers, are taken care of. Let's think about the herding communities. We have herdsmen, we have communities that rely on pastoralism. We do not support them. We just tell them, oh, the drought has come, 50% of your cows are dead, bring the remaining 50%, we are going to buy them from you. By the time those cows are in Nairobi, they are dead. How can we make sure that we are taking care of them and giving them the support that they need? Is it possible that those animals can be slaughtered wherever they are? In Northeastern, we don't have to bring them to Nairobi. Slaughter them in Northeastern and make sure that these farmers are not going through losses. Having said that, the youth, how do the youth then benefit from agriculture? We can create millions of jobs by adding value to our agricultural products.
Okay. Now, you know, they always say the first 100 days of presidency are one of the most definitive times of any new leadership. Now, should you be elected as the 5th president of Kenya and the first woman for that matter, what are the key factors that you're going to, or changes that you're going to set into motion within the first 100 days?
Number one is that we need to bring faith back to Kenyans that they are important people. I'm sure you've heard, you know, and it's a Swahili word, "I Kenya iligawanwa zamani." People feel, you know what, I'm just here, if I can get a job in another country, leave this country, what's the use? Number one, make sure that Kenyans feel important and that they know that this is their country and that their contribution is important to this country. Number two, address our ethics. Number three, remove VAT from food. We need to make sure that food is both accessible and affordable. Number four, remove VAT from electricity. Make sure that electricity, energy is affordable. Having said that, the teachers, they have been back and forth asking administration after administration, please increase our salaries, but no one is interested. And they only see teachers as a political card during any election. Tell the teachers, you know what? You've been on this journey too long. We are going to cut your taxes. Pay 50% of your taxes as teachers. That way, take more money home. And then we will address your remuneration later on because they're still not properly paid. For a country to move forward, it must invest in its education. We must. And then, having said that, in the first 100 days, it will be time for us to fix the mess in this country. Think about corruption, close all corruption taps, and make sure that we have enough money and put it in the right direction. In the first 100 days, we just need to think about the KCSE students that have just taken their KCSE. Over 800,000 Kenyans have taken their KCSE. What plans do we have for them? Unfortunately, 82% of the Kenyans who took the KCSE, 82% did not qualify to go to the university. What are we doing to make sure that these Kenyans are globally competitive? That will be my work.
Okay.
I will make sure that in the first 100 days, we fix the mess that we are in, and that we also create a way forward for Kenyans to feel worthy, important, but also create a space for Kenyans to grow. in a world of innovation, I'm going to be putting a lot of energy and focus on innovation, because I'm a youth. Most of our jobs are online. They're virtual jobs. I'm going to create that space. One of the conversations that I'm going to be interested in is basically talking to people like Facebook. Let's monetize Facebook in Kenya.
All right. Now, you've mentioned the aspect of corruption, and corruption has been a problem that we have been grappling with as a country for so many years. And just looking at the dailies today, you know, there's a whole 2 pages that covers the aspect of politicians with integrity issues that will be on the ballot. And again, as the president, it's not a one-man army. You would need a whole team to work with in order to bring to life these aspirations and dream that you have for the country. But the aspect of corruption still stands, and we have some names that we're not going to mention here. You can be able to have a look on the Daily Nation today to just see that they also stand a chance to be in the same government that you would be in.
And that's why I'm saying our country, it has a national crisis. We are a country that has public disorder as a result of corruption, and we must address these issues. We cannot hand over a morally defunct country to the next generation. What are we going to be telling them? That we had no ethics, we had no morals, and the thing that we could, the country that we could give to you is a country that is morally corrupt. We must address that issue. Now, you talk about corruption. It's very easy to deal with corruption. You know, we have addressed the corruption issue until we think that corruption is a ghost somewhere that doesn't have a face. We have the Kenyan anti-corruption. It's an authority by itself. We have the judiciary. We have a very competent Chief Justice. Allow the judiciary to do their job. This country will be corruption-free.
Allow the judiciary to do their job.
Yes.
Now, due to the interest of time, we are almost coming to the close of this conversation, but you had mentioned the aspect of tax.
Yes.
You know, within the first 100 days, should you be elected as the 5th president of our country? And at the moment, the country is in a situation where we are trying to raise another 50 billion to just fill in the gap that is in the 3.3 trillion budget that we already have. And then you mentioned the aspect of cutting taxes, and yet we know government doesn't generate its own revenue. It comes from the taxes that we pay as citizens, you know, from fast-moving goods, from VAT. Yes. How practical will that be when it comes to doing away with VAT?
It's very simple. As it is today, we woke up, by the time it's 5 p.m., 2 billion will have been lost through corruption. And it's on record that this country loses 2 billion every day. Now, our budget deficit is 862 billion. By the end of the year, 720 billion will be lost through corruption. It's very simple. Tighten up corruption tops, you have the money. It is very simple. As long as we are not bleeding this country through grand corruption, we have enough resources to take care of ourselves. Number 2, when people have more disposable income, what do? They spend more.
Yeah.
If they're spending more, what happens to our businesses? Our businesses grow. Because every trader who brings commodities into their shop, what are they intending to do is to sell it. But if people do not have money to spend, then what happens? They're not going to buy those things. They're going to just focus on buying food, paying rent, transport, and staying alive. But once you increase the amount of money that people can spend, what happens is that they are able to invest in things that are useful to them. They can build their homes and make sure that everybody has a home. They can spend on the things that are important to them. Why? Because they have more disposable income for them to spend. And you have asked a very important question about cutting taxes. Think about it. This teacher who works for us doesn't have money, but we are taxing them through income tax. Teachers, if you look at the teachers' pay stub, you'll be shocked at their pay slip. They have enough taxes. And after you have taxed them, they will still pay other taxes. Reduce the taxes, increase the amount of money that they can spend, more money comes into the economy. After all, anytime you have money that is circulating and money that is changing hands, that economy is going to grow. All right. And then allow it to be a free market. Remove the concept of monopolies. Yes.
And barriers. Now, as we close this conversation, there's your camera. Many people are watching us today and they have heard what you have had to say, but they still live in the reality that we are in at the moment. It's a very sensitive time, politically speaking, and you are also in the race. What is your message to Kenyans this morning?
Thank you very much. And I'm addressing every Kenyan and letting them know that our nation is very important. And I also want to speak to us that the election is a one-day event. One day. It is not worth it for us to kill each other over a one-day event, it is not worth it, because every Kenyan needs to live beyond August 9. But having said that, I also want us to know that it is time for us to think through what elections mean to us as Kenyans. What does it mean for you to have an election? And what is going to be your contribution in this election? Now, I'll be vying. My name is going to be on the ballot box. Ngigi Faith Wairimu. Vote for me, and let us proceed with this conversation after August 9. And you can look me up on my social media handles, Wairimu Faith, across Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, LinkedIn, TikTok. And I look forward to receiving your questions. Thank you.
Fantastic. We have been speaking with Wairimu Faith. She is one of the presidential aspirants in this year's elections. And as she has said, she will be looking forward to, interacting with you more and being able to secure your vote. You remind us the social handles once more?
Wairimu Faith.
Wairimu Faith. So should you have any more questions that you would like to direct to her in regards to her presidential candidacy, feel free to do so via the social media platforms. For now, we say thank you for being with us. I see Gelta. That's your name on Facebook. Thank you so much for being part of this. There's Jonathan Ongwai also tuned in. Siteti Douglas or Michael Mzalendo. Thank you so much for watching. Michael says already secured the vote. Thank you so much for being part of this broadcasting. We appreciate that you have been with us through and through. For now, we say goodbye. Be sure to join us again tomorrow morning. I'm Jane Wamboy. See you then.